What's up, guys? This is episode number 2 of Sport Karate Radio. This week, we are joined by Mr. Adam Kifer, along with your host, myself, Richard, and Corey. How are you guys doing?
Great.
I'm doing phenomenal.
Good to hear. So before we get into anything, we have Adam Kifer coming on the show to talk about music today. It's a big subject that I think is kind of overlooked in most aspects, so he's going to shine some light on that subject for us. And before we get into talking with Adam, we're going to hit up some tournaments. Corey, what do we have coming up for tournaments?
In the NASCAR world, we have the U.S. Capitol Classics coming up on August 4th and 5th, and that's in Washington, D.C. with Mr. Dennis Brown. 2 weeks after that, we have the Dixieland Nationals on August 18th and 19th. That's in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, with Mr. Dewey Earwood and Gentry Earwood. And then we got a couple months, and then there's the Diamond Nationals coming up in October. And that is, of course,
Awesome.
Minneapolis with Mr. Carnahan and Mr. Worley. So that's it for our NASCAR divisions kind of in the next couple months here. We have a bunch of regional stuff happening, at least around me in the Midwest here. And I can touch on those later. But, Rich, what do we have going on your end of the woods?
Well, we've got 2 coming up. I would consider my region being Kentucky and Missouri. Not a shameless self-promotion, but we have the Ozark Mountain Nationals coming up this weekend, July 29th. And on the very same weekend, the NBL Blue Ridge Conference has got its very first tournament in Kentucky in years, maybe ever, with the Thoroughbred Classic there in Eastern Kentucky on July 29th. So the NBL is trying to move into the basically Mid-South, which is a good move for them.
Awesome. Yeah, a lot of tournaments coming up in the next couple of months here, whether it be NASCAR or NBL or just regionals, period.
Yeah, it's looking real solid. This past weekend you had 3, one in Miami, which was the Bring It Nationals. You had one in Atlanta, which was the Gold Bar, and then you had one up in Louisville, Kentucky, which was Kick Fest. So, it's been, the summer sometimes for karate schools themselves are kind of a low point, but for tournaments, it actually heats up quite a bit. So, just in the last couple of weeks, you're going to have about 5 or 6 regional events. So, still plenty of action here during the summer months.
Awesome. And this week, we're talking about certifying and judges and rules and all that kind of stuff. But the big thing, I think, is the ProMac and what those guys are doing to help the sport out by certifying judges. Is that right?
Yeah, it's the brainchild of Toby and Greg Ruth. It's something they've come up with, and there's also some other ones, Mr. Presley and Mr. Rudolph, along with a host of others. And it's not the first of its kind. It's not to where they're the only ones that's ever done judging clinics and doing matching polos and stuff like that. But it's the first time we've actually heard it being brought to attention of the national scale. They used it at the Battle of Atlanta, and we ran 20-some-odd rings, I think, at the Battle of Atlanta. I was one of the judges there, and I think they said 85 to 90% of their judges took tests and did the certification before the Battle of Atlanta, which, to me, as far as my knowledge goes, that's unheard of in the sport, to have that many people go and take a test before a NASCAR tournament. And for the most part, there wasn't too much scuttlebutt as far as rules and clarifications and stuff like that and any kind of issues. So, again, I'm not saying they're the first ones to try and do this on a regional level, but to take it to a national level and try and help NASCAR and assist with actual judging certification for NASCAR big, huge events. I mean, it's an awesome thing.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry about that. So Richard, just kind of coming from the competitor perspective here, did having that testing have everyone on the same page? Did you notice a difference in kind of like how the tournament ran? Were there less questions, less disputes? I know lately I've been to several events where there's been a lot of disputes and arbitrations. And so and I know you're just one person kind of doing one event and you were working, but did it seem like it kind of cut down on that, or did you not notice, or was it just kind of like everyone was able to roll really well with their training and kind of move forward?
Well, I tell you what, I was over in the underbelt section, and for the most part, I'd worked with a lot of those center officials before in other regional events. And I tell you what, we were all it was almost like I think we ran almost 18 rings over there for underbelts, and there was basically like a mini arbitrator in every single ring. Like there was never too many issues that we couldn't handle as a center ref So we actually didn't, and they had 3 or 4 arbitrators over there that could handle any kind of disputes. So honestly, it cut down a lot of, like, if a parent come up and goes, hey, what about this? What about X, Y, and Z? I was able to answer those questions for them and get it done quickly right there without bringing an arbitrator. Now, again, granted, this is on the underbelt side. So going over the black belt side, we're still trying to. I think it's still a work in progress. It'd be nice to give. I know a lot of promoters have to judge center rings for these tournaments. They've been doing it for 35 years. I think part of the ProMac process is to try and see if we can't help give some of those guys a break. The main promoters throughout the NASCA circuit have been the guys that have been the head judges for the majority of these rings for years. And I think it's time to try and give these guys a little bit of a break and let these guys be promoters, because they're fantastic promoters. And so I think that's kind of one of the things they're trying to do too, is on the black belt side, because we all know it. We see it every day on social media. I think the black belt section is probably the section we have to clean up the most. There's always a discrepancy on the rules. There's always a tweak here and there. So I think the black belt side is where we got to make our professional statement, because that's what gets broadcasted out. Even though we have a ton of underbelts at these tournaments, that's not what gets broadcasted out on the internet. It's talking about what happens in the black belt division. So I think eventually it's going to migrate to there, and we're going to see a big, huge difference with that.
Well, that's excellent. I mean, it's kind of, like I said, we've all been to those events where things get tied up for hours sometimes because there's an arbitration or an issue or an argument. And those things happen. I think they'll always happen. But if you were able to see kind of a difference even in your underbelt section, I agree with you. It's a different level of competition, and there's a different set of expectations amongst people with black belts. It gets a lot messier, like you said, but I also think those expectations for what they're doing get much more defined, which kind of lends itself to more, discrepancies and challenges of interpretation.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And, the other thing too, and just as a simple thing for, judging, the one thing that the Battle of Atlanta had to look up, see, there was an actual dress code. You had to wear the polos and then the black pants. And I think that was probably the most uniformed tournament I've ever seen on the NASCA circuit, with everybody, for the most part. I mean, there was a couple here and there just because they were short on some judges because we got busy. But for the most part, everybody had the matching uniforms, and that's kind of what we're missing. You talk about Waco, and you talk about the the traditional Taekwondo, like the AAU. Those guys are in dress ties. WKF. Those guys are dressed up. They're wearing shirts and ties. They look uniformed. And this was the first time I've seen it at a NASCA event on that type of level, to where that many people were looking the same. You knew who a judge was at the event, which was excellent.
Very glad you brought up that professional look, because we're going to talk about that next week, about professionalism and that kind of thing. But what tournament did you have those arbitrators at, or Richard?
Where was that? On the ones that I worked with before?
The tournament that you were at that had arbitrators in the ring.
Oh, that's what I was talking. That was at the Battle of Atlanta.
Okay. So having arbitrators in the ring, they kind of just handle all the dirty work, and the center judge doesn't really have to get involved then?
Well, that's what I was saying. Actually, what I was referring to was that the Battle of Atlanta, which is probably one of the better organized events, other than the Diamond Nationals. I got to give Diamond Nationals some love because it's extremely organized. But they had arbitrators broke down for every so many rings. There was an arbitrator for that ring. So let's take in the underbelt division. So for every 4 or 5 divisions, or every 4 or 5 rings, there was an arbitrator for that. What I was saying was, or referring to, was that the center judges, because we were tested and certified and we had been through this ProMax system, we were almost basically like an in-house arbitrator. So if a parent come up and had a dispute or something going on in the ring, we were educated enough to be able to answer that and get that question taken care of without having to call over an arbitrator. So they did. It was kind of like an arbitrator with inside the ring. What I was referring to was the actual center judges, us, because we'd been through the certification, been through the process a little bit. We were able to handle a lot of those disputes that sometimes you'd have to call somebody else over. And we still had that. I'm not saying we eliminated it, but it really cut down on that.
That's cool. I think that brings a little bit the tournaments to kind of a little bit more of a professional stage, which I think needs to happen with those arbitrators, and like you were talking about with the uniforms and stuff like that. But we'll talk about that more with next week's show. But that's cool. I'm glad that somebody's kind of stepping up to the plate and trying to make these tournaments run better, be a little more professional, and all that kind of stuff. So that's great to hear.
Absolutely.
All right, switching gears. We are now going to have Adam in the Sport Karate Radio podcast here, and he's talking about music. So without further ado, let's get to Adam.
All right, it is that time. We have Mr. Adam Kifer in the building from Level Up Music. Adam, how you doing, man?
I am great, Bobby. How are you today?
I am doing fantastic. Thanks for being on the show. Definitely appreciate it. You seem like you're pretty much everywhere behind the scenes, whether you're at the Hyper Pro Camp DJing, doing those parent night out events for all the martial arts school owners, creating mixes for competitors and everything. You're just everywhere in the martial arts world right now, aren't you?
Well, I love martial arts, man. I've been doing it since I was 3, so as involved as I can be in the martial arts, it just makes me a happy person.
Awesome. And it's a huge contribution that you're making to the sport karate world, and it's just awesome to see. And again, thanks for being on the show, but we want to get right into the music part because that is the big thing that we're hitting up today with you is music at tournaments and music at your karate schools and stuff like that. Can you just kind of explain what Level Up Music is and how you're involved with that as far as the sport karate world goes?
Yeah, definitely. So as far as sport karate goes, we make custom remixes, even like original songs for martial arts competitors. We do it where either they can give us a video of their form and we can make the music actually sync to the video, or a lot of times they'll just want the music first and then they'll create the form to the music. But either way, it sort of started with Micah Carnes. I used to have private lessons with Micah when he was competing regularly, and he knew that I was a DJ and into music, and we just decided to collab on a song for one of his forms. And then he ended up really liking it, and then just sort of spread the word from there to other competitors, and then it just sort of took off from there.
Cool. That's awesome. And how many people are you making mixes for on a consistent basis for these karate tournaments?
You know, it's a little different every month. I think part of it depends like how much I promote it. Like when we posted the video of Jacob Ellis's Ironman form that we did, and we got swamped after that. But I would say on average we do like, I don't know, 4 to 5 a month, and that's sort of based on like what our queue is. Like we had, I don't know, maybe like 22 people in our queue for a while, so getting through all of that took a little while, just because we completely rebuild the song from scratch. So like down to like the smallest drum beat that you hear, we're creating everything. So on average it takes about 10 hours for us to do a remix. So we're not trying to like just like funnel people through the musical form system and just pump them out. We actually want to make them like really quality and professional sounding, and something that the competitor really likes.
Cool. And this music that you're making, what kind of music is it? I mean, it's not your traditional like Karate Kid music or, you know, old, you know, Japanese type style music. It's good music that you can hear on the radio today, right?
Exactly. Although if the Karate Kid, You're the Best Around is probably one of the greatest songs of all time. But no, yeah, it's professional sounding music. It's like radio quality. I've gone to school for audio production. My team members that do remixes for me as well, they all have backgrounds in audio production or degrees in audio production. So it's something that we've all been trained to do. The guy that works with me the most on remixes is also a classically trained musician. He's like one of those guys that can literally pick up any instrument and like know how to play it. We did a remix of actually going back to the Jacob Ellis. We've done this a couple times, but Jacob Ellis's remixes. For the walkout, we did Back in Black, and then the actual song was once the drop hit was a remix of Black Sabbath Iron Man. And back in the day when they would record music, they didn't do it to a click track, so the drum beat wasn't always consistent. So we actually had to remake the entire guitar part for the Iron Man track. So we had a musician come in with his electric guitar. We got the sound sounding exactly how we wanted it for the Iron Man, and then we had him replay the guitar riff from Iron Man and actually use that. So when I say we go back to actually creating it from scratch, that's what we did with that song. We've done it for a few other like rock remixes we've done as well. But our goal is to make it sound like it could be played on the radio. We want that type of quality with it.
That's awesome. Now, when you go to these karate tournaments and stuff, how has the music kind of evolved? Because I think when people kind of think of sport karate tournaments or just karate tournaments, what they're thinking of is like your old school karate tournament in a gym, bunch of people just doing traditional blocks and stuff. But when that music was introduced into that world, everything just kind of got turned around a little bit, and the atmosphere just exploded. How has the music evolved in sport karate?
So it's been really interesting to see. I think like the first people to start doing musical forms were people like John Chung, who had a really noticeable musical form that was really popular, and it sort of went from there. And it started where like people would just pick a song, and then they'd do their form that they already had to it, or they'd create a form to it. Custom music, I think, started to come around like in the Mike Chat days, if I remember correct. He did the Street Fighter form, which like was an amazing. I remember watching that as a kid, and I thought it was like the greatest thing in the world. But he was one of the first person that I saw using custom music, where he actually had that created for his form, and it. I think that's part of the reason. Obviously, he was super talented, but part of the reason that form is so memorable is just because it was music you couldn't hear anywhere else. And then, sort of evolving from that, you go to like a guy like Kim Do, who was also a DJ who sort of took different sound effects from video games and put it into his form. Like Guy Perquette was like one of the first guys. He was on Team Chat International, one of the first guys to do a completely sound effect form where every single move in his form hit a sound effect. And then I think with like what you're hearing now, I think that was sort of started that movement by Stephen Rennie. He started doing music. His music production was really good. He started doing music for a lot of competitors, and it was very dramatic, and also sort of had like an EDM aspect to it. But I think the music now is sort of people that have tried to copy that, and it's just not the same quality.
So I know you want to talk about some music within NASCA. What's the difference between the bad music or the music that could be better and the music that you're doing? What separates yourself from that?
So I think the first thing is like I think custom music now is the way to go in NASCA. You can still compete to like a popular song, you might do okay, but if your song goes to your form really well, that's even better. Here's my issue with like the music now on NASCA. I think a lot of the people that are creating music for NASCA competitors are doing it to make money and just doing as many as they can, and not really being concerned about the quality. I've had a lot of people that have come to me that have gotten music from someone else and have asked me to fix the music after they got it, or they just didn't like it and wanted something different. So I think that the other people that I've seen making music in NASCA, they're not too concerned about the quality of it. And I think a lot of the drops in the song, so like when they start like their first like fast hand combo, to be honest, it sounds like shoes in a dryer. There's just a bunch of kick drums like going all over the place, and there's no musicality to it. It like just doesn't make sense. And to give you a good example, a good story, I played one of the more popular musical form remixes for one of my production teachers at Columbia College. And as soon as he heard the drop, he looked so confused. He just didn't understand, like this guy's been doing music his whole life, been teaching music and audio production his whole life, has actually produced for like some really big name artists as well. And he was like stunned why anyone would want that or want to even listen to that type of music, just because the kicks overlap so much that it overpowers the entire song. And yeah, I don't get it.
That's interesting to hear. I think once people kind of listen for those differences, that it'll start to point them in the right direction of what quality they're looking for within a custom mix. But one big thing that I want to ask you about here is, what does music do for sport karate? What does music do for the sport?
So obviously, like, we have tons of unbelievably talented athletes in sport karate right now. And I think the music just sort of enhances the performance aspect of what they're doing. I think anytime you add music to martial arts, it adds more drama, it adds more energy, it adds more suspense and excitement when it's the right music, of course. It also can add fun to it. Like I remember back in the day, Jeff Ikejiri from Team Chat used to walk out to the Barney song, like, and he would win. He would win, but it just added like a different element of fun to his open form, which was, hey man, whatever works, it's cool. But yeah, I think it adds a lot, and I think when you take that away, it can actually take away from the performance. And I know you and I were talking about this before, Bobby, but the last U.S. Open broadcast, they actually overdubbed the music just because all the competitors obviously use music that is done by artists that own the rights to those songs. The competitors don't have the rights to those songs, so they overdubbed like all the music for the nighttime show, and they put this awful rock track, like really generic royalty-free rock track, over Tyler Weaver's form, and it just like completely took away from his amazing performance.
So what do the competitors need to do, or is it on the competitors, or is it on ESPN or something in order for that actual track to be played without being dubbed over? What needs to happen for that?
I actually don't think it's on either. I think it's on NASCA, to be honest, or ISKA. Whoever's running the tournaments, it's on them. Because the other thing too that's happening is their Facebook Live feeds keep getting shut down because of like music copyright infringement. So I think it's on the tournament promoters and NASCA to come up with rules saying, hey, these are the approved songs, or hey, you have to use original songs, because otherwise it's going to keep happening. Like it's going to keep getting overdubbed, and like it's not good for the sport when you have this awesome show on ESPN and then they put like this cheesy music over these amazing performances. So that's not taking the sport anywhere good. It's actually taken away from the sport in my eyes. So I think NASCA needs to come up with rules saying, almost like they do like in cheerleading and gymnastics competitions now, saying that it has to be either an original song that they're using, or it's like on an approved list they're saying, hey, these people gave us permission, or we paid licensing for these artists to use their songs, so we can use this. But they're going to have to do something to come up with a set of rules if they want to change that.
Cool. Well, thank you, Adam, for being on the show this week. We definitely appreciate it. If you guys haven't already, check out Level Up Music. They make, the best quality karate mixes for anybody that's looking to compete at tournaments. Does Level Up Music do any other type of music production other than for forums?
We actually do music streaming for martial arts schools as well. So we have a lot of clients that stream music from our website during classes. And then the cool thing is all the music mixes that we have, they're all DJ mixes. They're professionally put together. They're also clean. So we take out this. It's actually like cleaner than what you hear on the radio, because we, besides taking out swears and stuff, we take out like drug, alcohol, sexual references, all that stuff. So that way, it's everything they play is family friendly, of course.
Cool. So basically, any music needs that you are looking for, Level Up Music offers.
Exactly. We can do it all.
Awesome. Very cool. Thank you, Adam, for stopping in this week. Definitely appreciate it. Check out Level Up Music and get all of your music needs from those guys.
Big thank you to Adam Kifer for coming in and talking about music and sport karate. In the meantime, from episode 1, we had Mr. Mike Welsh from Infinity Martial Arts on the show. He got challenged for that Minute of Fury, and he sent us his video of him and some of his team Infinity, and we got that video. It's up on our page. If you haven't checked it out yet, make sure you guys check it out. Tons of comments on that video. Everybody had a great time making it, from the sounds of what Mike said. What did you guys think of the video?
I actually just watched it right now as we were kind of talking through, just so I could refresh my memory, and I liked it a lot. I think the thing I like the most is, it is Team Infinity, and they have a certain style all to themselves, and it's very clean. It's very well done. But also, you can tell they had a lot of fun with it. If you look in the back, I think it might be one of his instructors is wearing like a winter hat. And, there's a lot of you can see the personalities, and I know a couple people in there didn't have Packers gear until this video aired. So there was, I know they all had a pretty good time making it, and I've heard a couple stories from it already, unrelated to being on the page and everything else. So,
Rich, what did you think of the video?
Yeah, I tell you what, if that's the start of these videos, everybody better get their game caps on, because I tell you what, they sure did bring it on the first one. I mean, it's gonna. You talk about setting a standard. If you were at a NASCA event and that was the first guy doing their forms, you'd be kind of sweating bullets a little bit, going, man, that's the first one out the gate. So I tell you what, man, the bar's been set. But of course, like Corey said, man, that's Team Infinity. I mean, what are we gonna? I mean, good Lord, man, those guys are like known for that kind of stuff. And then they come out with a group and they set the video up like that. I'm just telling the competition, not telling them they can't get ahead of them, but man, woof, I tell you what, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be real tough.
I know I was talking with Adam earlier, and he mentioned he saw the video, and he wasn't a fan just because he's from the Chicago area, so he's a big Bears fan. But he said, other than the jerseys and the winter hats and all that kind of stuff, he loved it.
Yeah, it was really good. Yeah, I'm a Kansas City guy, so Green Bay's not in my division, so I'm partial to the cheeseheads. But as far as just actually from the karate side, woof, man, I tell you what, the bar has been set high.
Yeah, and in watching that video, there was late moves in that video with a couple of individuals, but all together, the video was solid. Everybody was together for the most part. Everything was in tune with the music for the most part, I thought, also. And it was just really well done.
Yeah, I totally agree. A great way to start.
Definitely. Corey, what do we have coming up for karate tournaments in your area where you're located? Some regional stuff, right?
Yeah, so, I talked about some of the NASCA events that are coming up earlier, and then we also have some stuff happening, excuse me, in the Wisconsin area kind of coming up here. So on September, 10th, we have a pretty big event that I think you guys have heard of before, the Capital City Open Fall Championships, which is at Lodi High School. And then we have, of course, the Southern Wisconsin Open on September 24th in Verona. So those are kind of the two big tournaments we have here in Wisconsin for kind of before Diamonds. And I know we've talked about Southern Wisconsin Open on this show before. So the 24th of September is when that is happening this year with Mr. Jeff Christensen.
And that's a really good tournament. I remember going there back when I was a kid, and you're running into some really good competitors. It's the warm-up for Diamonds, as a lot of people look at it. You're running into, like, Alex Dingman, and who else have I seen there? Team Edge has been there, Nathan Thorne, and a couple of other big people.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of good forms competitors come as well. Some good fighters, yeah, absolutely. So it pulls a pretty good card, and it's been working towards kind of being that wind-up for Diamonds. And I know the Capital City Open Fall Championships is kind of like the wind-up for the wind-up, if that makes sense. So there's a neat sense of community here, and we're all kind of working together a little bit, but each person has their own kind of twist a little bit, and Mr. Christensen's definitely did a good job making the Southern Wisconsin Open something a little bit different than the traditional karate event. So it's always a good one to look forward to. After that, we have Diamonds, of course, and yeah, I mean, that's kind of the big events coming up here for the fall. There should be some more events coming on. I haven't checked into, I know I'm a little bit involved with the AKA circuit. I haven't checked into that one too much. So I'll be looking into kind of the upcoming events more in the region. If anyone kind of listening to this knows what's going on, feel free to shoot us a message on our Facebook page, and we can kind of put that in there. If you know stuff coming on or something we may want us to know about, please tell us about it, and we'd love to let everybody else know.
Lots of events for sure. Only halfway, well, I guess a little over halfway throughout the year, so a lot of stuff heating up over the summer.
Awesome. Yeah, a lot of cool events coming up. We're going to wrap things up here for episode number 2. Big thank you to Adam Kifer for coming on the show, talking about music in sport karate. He brought up some good points within NASCA. We're looking forward to seeing his Minute of Fury video, and as soon as we get probably 3 or 4 videos in, we'll start judging those and updating the leaderboard from there on out with the videos that we get sent in from our guests. So big thank you to Adam Kifer for that. And we look forward to seeing his video. Rich, Corey, pleasure as always. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Yes, sir. Thank you.